Thank you everyone for coming along. My name's Nick Buxton, I'm the Associate Director of Sales at RedEye. For those of you who don't know, RedEye are a market-leading ECRM or marketing automation provider, conversion rate optimization and website personalization business. We're immensely proud of all of the work we do with our clients, but specifically today we wanted to talk about one. We wanted to talk about Penhaligons. We wanted to tell you the story of how we've worked with Penhaligons over the recent few years and why it is that we wanted to talk to you today. Now, there's three main reasons we want to talk about Penhaligons. The first one being that we've got a really strong relationship with their digital team at Penhaligons. Now, this has been born out of a few years worth of work and them touching most of the sides of our business, in fact, all of the parts of our business. They are, a very ambitious B2C omnichannel retailer, so they have touched our marketing automation, our customer insight, our database build, conversion rate optimization, and website personalization. So, in terms of a client, we couldn't ask for anything better. The final 2 points are interesting ones as marketers and suppliers to businesses like Penhaligons are that they have to walk the digital tightrope of balancing the luxury brand, so the aspirational value of a business, but also the conversion as well. So much like many other brands, they have conversion and profit revenues to hit, but they can't do that at the expense of their brand. Which means, they have to stay true to their core values and their raison d'etre, but also with an eye on conversion as well. So they have to think about new ways and engaging ways to talk to their customers. The final one is a really interesting one, and it's more of a product one, is it's a very conceptual product. If I try and articulate to you now the benefits of a perfume, it's quite a difficult thing to talk about, the scent, how it makes you feel. And if I write that down, it gets even harder. As a marketer, I try my best to try and communicate that to you in as little words as possible, using imagery and as concisely as possible, but it's a very difficult thing to do. So it's an extra challenge we've had to work with in understanding and helping Penhaligons on their way. So what we've got today is an agenda that we pulled together. So like any good story, we've got 3 parts, beginning, middle and end. And we've taken some inspiration from Penhaligons as well. So we've got Sullivan to talk to us and give their perspective on the work we've been doing. But there are 3 key ingredients to a perfume or fragrance. Now the head notes, now this is how Penhaligons got to know their customers at a deeper level with RedEye. So the head notes are typically the first part of a fragrance you'll pick up on. It's normally the reason people buy a fragrance, it's that initial reaction. The heart notes are the core part of the fragrance. So this is how RedEye help Penhaligons to use their data and drive their marketing strategy. Now this is the part of the perfume that comes through after about 2 minutes of wearing, and it's a much rounder, much fuller part of the fragrance. Finally, the base notes. So this is how, as a relationship, we went on to help Penhaligons improve all of their digital marketing. And much like the long-lasting relationship, base notes are the heaviest part. They're the biggest molecules in a perfume. So they're the parts of the perfume that come through after about 30 minutes of wearing, once it's warmed up on your skin, those types of things. The sort of thing you pick up on during the day. And I've been asked by marketing as well to reiterate that we will have breakfast at 9:30 and the food looks great as well. So at this point, I'd like to invite Sullivan up just to give us a talk through the Penhaligons background. Give him a round of applause if we can.
Thank you, Nick. So I'm Sullivan, Digital Marketing Manager for Penhaligons. So I'm going to talk about the journey we've been through with RedEye in the past 2 years now. So Penhaligons, who's Penhaligons? So Penhaligons is a British luxury fragrance brand who's been founded in 1870 by William Penhaligon, who started as a barber in the Turkish baths on Jermyn Street. And basically then it's been taken over by his son, and over the years they've launched more and more fragrances, from the first fragrance, Hamam Bouquet, inspired by the Turkish bath, to the recent launch that just actually launched last Friday, called the Portraits Collection. And so the values of the brand as this traditional British heritage and using the finest ingredients to craft original scents. All the products are manufactured in the UK, so it's very important for us. and that allows us to keep the 2 royal warrants that we've had for some years now. So why working with RedEye? So at the time, so about 2 years ago, we realized that we needed a real shift in terms of the digital strategy to optimize the experience for the customers. We were lagging behind in terms of emails and website conversion and all that. So the goal was to find a partner to help us do that because the team was quite small. It's nearly double now, but we're just 6 people basically. So at the time we were just 3 doing everything. So we started working with RedEye to make that step change and ensure that we're not lagging behind anymore. But also while keeping the luxury feel of the brand, because we can't compromise on that. So obviously we have high target, as everyone probably does, but we can't get too commercial and everything like that. So it was important for us to find a partner that would understand that and yeah, work with us on this.
So what we did after our initial meetings with Penhaligons were understand what it was that they were trying to get out of their new engagement with us. So the first one was the website conversion wasn't quite where they wanted it to be. There were a range of challenges and the customer journey wasn't quite as seamless as they were hoping it was going to be. The second one was to improve CRM. Now, perfume is one of those things that is very personal, very intimate, and if we can strengthen that relationship that Penhaligons were having with their brands, that would mean that the lifetime value of a customer would be really, really high. And the third one was to try and enrich the business's understanding of its customer base. So Penhaligons and Sullivan and the team had a good idea of their prospects, they had good understanding of their personas, but they wanted some metrics to put behind that and help them understand how to move those people through those lifetime values. So in order for us to start doing that, we wanted to collect as much information as possible. So the starting point needs to be for us to gather as much information as we can about that customer, about any of the customers. So this led into us creating a single customer view for Penhaligons. Now this was just for the purposes of our insight project, but also ongoing as well, so that they can have something usable and something to measure against. The data we used for that were a range, and it's pretty much anything we could get our hands on across the across the business that we could identify at an individual level. So we had transactional online and in-store, so we could make comparisons, website behaviour, customer device, and anonymous browsing behaviour. The final 3 are picked up by our platform's technology, so those are the sort of things that we'd pick up on an ongoing basis, but the first 2 were fed to us by Penhaligons and the team. After that, we started our project, our insight project with them. So once we got all of this deduped at an individual level, we then had to go through and try and make some sense of it. Because we weren't looking at it from just one perspective, there wasn't one objective to try and get out of it, we needed a few different measuring sticks or a few different mechanisms for us to understand the customer data. So the first one was customer analysis. So we typically look at customer analysis as part of any introduction with a business, but for this we wanted to define customer segments, RFM bands, lapsing values, any of that type of information. Online purchase behaviour, so typically purchasers will give us information as they go through their funnel about how they're finding the brand experience, what they're finding is doing the right things for them. We can pick up on that information through tags placed on the website, so we gathered all that information to identify what a good purchase pattern looks like so that we can make that differentiation. The next one was in-store. Now in-store is always an interesting one because we see a lot of information differ across our client bases. So we often see that average order value and transaction volumes are different across on and offline. Average order value in store is typically higher. They've come out of their way, they've come into your store, they've engaged with your staff, they're probably really bought into the brand, so they may spend that little bit more. So understanding the difference between the two gives us an idea of the headroom we've got and where we could take the digital marketing to. Again, customer web behaviour. So if we can identify a smooth process or what is working for the customers that we've identified, that gives us a good starting point for conversion optimization. And also, conversely, prospect behaviour. If we can make a differentiation between the two, we can try and drive the prospect's behaviour into a customer behaviour so that we can try and remove some of those barriers. So the impact of the Insight project was we crucially gave Penhaligons a much better understanding of their customer base. Now this came through in a few different learnings, but the first one were that we launched over 20 new email campaigns. These were largely built up of behavioural lifecycle type campaigns that were launched to try and smooth that journey across digital and in-store. We also identified 8 new customer segments. So what we were talking about previously, RFM, lapsing, all of those really good core ones. But also on top of that, we looked at website personalisation profiles as well. So not just email, we're talking about trying to drive people through personalisation onto the site. And finally, there was a predictive model that we put in place. So this was to help identify prospects that were likely to or about to make a first purchase. So if we can identify that type of behaviour, we are we're better placed to be able to influence that journey. Now, email challenges. Now, it's probably worth saying at this point, we were hoping to have another member of the Penhaligons team with us today, Erin, who runs the CRM at Penhaligons, but unfortunately she can't make it with us today. So I'm covering her email challenges. So if this sounds like Penhaligons talking through me, that's probably why. So the challenges were that, like Sullivan alluded to, they didn't have a very big team, so they needed to make the most of their resources and also the technology to try and automate as much as possible. The next one was testing. They weren't doing any testing previously prior to our engagement, and in terms of anything, digital marketing or in life really, the virtues of testing are that you learn that much quicker. You have the opportunity to try and optimise journeys, try and optimise campaigns. And if you're not doing it, you're committing a cardinal sin, but the failure of a test isn't the bad thing, it's the not testing. So that was something that was a real challenge to the Penhaligons team. The next one we've talked about, but again, they didn't feel like they were judging the right line between staying true to the core values of the brand and also chasing the revenue targets. So sometimes they thought they were too hard on the brand side, sometimes they were too hard on chasing the revenue side. And the final one was, like we talked about, there weren't quite the customer segments in place that they wanted. They were talking to all of their customer base in the same way, regardless of whether I spent £1,000 or whether I spent £2.50. So what we did was we launched a range of initiatives, but the first one was a really interesting one. So typically when we do database builds, we actually end up paring down databases, and they're probably a little bit slimmer than the marketing teams would anticipate, just because you're deduplicating. But in this one, maybe just a quirk of the data we were working with, but the database size increased, which is a great thing, so we've got more people to contact, we've got a better contact strategy. The next one was, we've seen through data insight and behaviour on site, that there was a proliferation of mobile and tablet devices. Much like the rest of retail, there was a higher volume of tablet and mobile devices than ever before. So a quick win was to launch responsive templates. The next one we talked about, we now have the insight and functionality to be able to deliver dynamic content and personalisation. So first name, last name, products that you've bought, or products that go well with products you bought. As we said, the key segments were identified, and also behavioural emails and lifecycle emails were introduced to try and smooth the journey between online and email. These typically weren't happening previously. The behavioural ones were, I believe, down to technology restraints, but they were launched as part of our rollout. So what we've got here are a couple of samples of the emails that we launched. The first one is a product abandonment. So we've got there the actual perfume that was abandoned but was in the basket. So we can follow that up with a really nice look and feel email that goes out after they've abandoned. The next one is category abandonment. So again, using personalisation, but also trying to stay true to the almost cheeky Penhaligons tone of voice. Is there something that you've missed? Why don't you come back and have another look? What we saw from those were fantastic results. We had really good opens and click-through rates, but the return on investment was around 776%, which for a new campaign we thought was pretty good.
So on the conversion side, so as I said before, we felt like we needed to put some improvements in the digital team. In particular, when I joined, putting in place a CRO strategy that wasn't in place before. But at the time, and actually it's still the case, the CMS that we have doesn't allow us to make those tests on our end. It's quite an old system, it's not really flexible. So obviously the goal was to put a strategy in place to increase revenue on the website and to focus on a few key pages and elements that haven't changed at all since the website launched a few years ago. So namely the product pages or the navigation on site. But obviously we needed, first of all, someone to help us build those tests in terms of the code and everything, but also come up with ideas, because as we know the brand really well in the team, but we obviously it's essential to get someone from the outside to have another look and have fresh eyes to look at the website. And also, as I mentioned before, the goal was not only to implement tests, but also to make a real cultural change in the company and go from gut feeling decisions to data-driven decisions, and that when our bosses or marketing director come to us and say, I want this image to be smaller or bigger, that we can actually tell him, well, no, we're just going to test it before we do it.
So this was for us when, once we'd had that brief from Sullivan and understood what they were challenged with internally, we went through and started our strategy. We had a really good starting point in the data insight and understanding what the customer journeys were and what the barriers were for first purchase. But we didn't have a holistic view. We needed some more information that was qualitative. So we went through and did some expert reviews. So our office in Victoria, we've got a range of UX experts. So they went through, identified what they thought they would change. But then we got in a group of prospect Penhaligons or demographic representative people to go through a customer journey on the Penhaligon site. And we used all of that information on top of the customer insight data. So we used all of that and helped ourselves build some ideal tests. So what did we think would actually work well on the site, but also to help prioritize that roadmap as well. So some of these things here we think it's going to be really strong revenue increases or engagement increases. These ones are the things that are going to be marginal, and we'll prioritize those ones accordingly. So what we then led into was a series of A/B tests and website personalization.
So looking at that's actually the first A/B test that we did with RedEye on the website. So looking at product page, which is obviously a very important page for us. So that was the page before, that's the control. So we had the fragrance logo on top. Everything is center aligned. Get the notes of the fragrance first. So add notes and base notes. Then price, size with two buttons, add to back, and then the description, all the social buttons, and on the left side the image with customer reviews and some other functionalities such as wish list. So basically this page, as I said, is really important for us because for fragrances, obviously the image is important, but what's important is how to carry what it smells like. And there was some discussion internally regarding the notes versus the description, because we are very strong on storytelling at Penhaligons, and we've had quite a few push from the marketing side to tell us, well, actually the notes shouldn't really be that prominent, because what's important is the story behind the fragrance and not what's in it. So we said, why not? But let's test this, and that was the perfect occasion, because as we just started to work with RedEye at the time, that's the first test that they offered was this. So we did a variation, which is this one, where basically RedEye just thought that basically what would be cool would just to make everything much cleaner. So declutter all the left side to just put the image on its own, and basically remove the social that actually didn't really get any clicks. Put this on at the top of the page. Remove the fragrance logo, which was not really bringing any kind of information that was useful for the customer to make a decision we're getting the fragrance. And then there was actually another variation. This is the winner, but there was another one where this was actually at the bottom. So following marketing, wish to put the description first. But this one was the winner and brought a 16.2% revenue uplift. Interestingly, that's partly from conversion rate optimization, but mostly through AOV optimization improvement. The assumption here is that this version is just much easier for the customer to kind of like get what key information he needs to make decision on the fragrance. So it just makes the journey on the website more fluid, so people can look at this page and just either decide that yes, they love this fragrance or get to the next one. And so the AOV increased dramatically thanks to this test. Then after this first successful test and a few others, RedEye mentioned this web personalization tool that they were just starting to experiment, to work with. So we did a few tests with them on this. So I'm going to take you through 3 tests. The first one was looking at targeting people who are in the database, so trying to create a more personal feel, give them more advantage to be on the database. So basically, this was targeting all those people in the database and adding an extra section on the website in the header that's called Online Secrets, and that then takes them to a page with special offers, with little gifts, with that kind of thing. And also on the back of that, there was another test that was targeting people who were not on the database and basically talk about this Online Secrets page, so to try and increase the database. So there was these first 2 tests that worked together, and the third test was, I'm going a bit fast here. So basically targeting prospects, and from the data insights, we knew that we had actually in the database quite a lot of people who were interacting with the brand, opening emails, going on the website, but not purchasing at all. And from this predictive model that we had in terms of prospects, we knew that prospects were much more likely to buy first a low price item, such as the body cream or the rollerballs, rather than the fragrance that's £120. So basically what we did is add this banner targeting those prospect people and showcasing the products that were low price, such as, again, the lip balm or things like this. And this test brought 46% uplift in revenue on this segment. So very successful for us. So the results globally in terms of email and conversion and everything. So in terms of email, we've seen a 58% increase in direct conversion. That's through a better segmentation, that's through A/B testing, and through making sense of the data that we have with RedEye. In terms of conversion rate, we've seen a site-wide uplift in the revenue per visitor of 3.28%, which is great for us, and that's through iterative tests. So the one that you saw before was the first test. Obviously, there's been a series of tests after that, and incrementally by optimizing pages after pages. After a year now, where we have 3.28% increase, and that's also through web personalization, as well as some new projects that we're working on, such as mobile A/B test, etc. And so great results, but also that's helped us build that testing culture. As I said before, now we're able, obviously at first the reaction was like, oh, we don't want to change the product page so dramatically because that's such a big shift and we're scared. But we did the first test anyway. And now they've really understood, because when you come back to the CEO or the marketing director and tell them, well, listen, you don't like the new page, but it brings 20% more revenue, then you're just okay with it. So now after that, after a few tests like this, now we're able to really tell him, well, that thing that you want to do, then we're going to test. And that's really changed the way that we work with the top management. So that was through working with RedEye as a real extension of the team, because again, we were 3 people, not with 6, but it's a very small team for the amount of work that we have to do. So working with Ian on my side and with Richard and Erin's side on the email strategy. So basically worked with them and got like real flexibility on their side in terms of, you know, again, like top management, last minute changes and that kind of thing, and wanting to launch something the next day, things like this, just the usual. And also working with the data insight team, who's worked on all the data that we had, so consolidate all the data that we had for about 13 years from the different systems that we implemented in the years. So putting all that together, making sense of the data to understand, you know, cross-channel and everything like this, and try to make sense of it in a way that we can action with emails and experiments. And also growing the database, because obviously if we're going to target people more in a smarter way, we want the database to be as big as possible. And also the tool, which is Contour, which I don't use much, but Erin uses quite a lot, which has allowed us to also spend much less time on actually building the emails and preparing the segmentation through an intuitive tool.
Great. Thank you, Sullivan. If you've got any questions, obviously Sullivan's going to be sitting down with us over breakfast. We've also got Ian here as well. Ian's the account manager for Penhaligons, so he'll be able to field any questions. And we've also got Charlie in the middle of the room, who is our leading salesperson for conversion rate optimization. So he can answer any web perso or conversion rate optimization questions. But thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed it.
I think the key takeaways from the presentation today is really understanding how you can optimize key points through CRM.
It was interesting to just talk to people about the journey that we've been through with RedEye, and also learn about, you know, how they deal with it in their own organization. Working with RedEye has been easy because basically we've spent quite a lot of time at the beginning when we first set up the relationship. I'm able to completely rely on them to launch tests even if I'm away.
Working with RedEye has been a really successful relationship. They really spend time to understand our business, and from that we're getting much more valuable testing and strategies coming out of it. So it's a really good partnership.
It's been really good working with RedEye. We've been seeing really good results in terms of the tests that we've been running and the personalisation. A lot of the A/B tests have been delivering positive results, so we're looking forward to seeing what's next in the future.